Just before we start, can you make sure you introduce yourself when you speak for the first time, please? I'm just going to go through item 1, which is apologies for the meeting, and we've received apologies from Jan Bretton and Bradley Stevens. Our second item on the agenda is the election of chair, and are there any nominations for chair of the board for the forthcoming year?
Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. Can I nominate Councillor Robinson, please?
Yeah. And is there a seconder for that, please?
Somebody put their hand up. I can do that.
Yeah, seconded by Paul. Are there any other nominations for chair? In that case, Councillor Robinson, you're elected chair for the forthcoming year.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, good afternoon. We are in apparently the only air-conditioned room in the building. So I intend to have all my meetings in this room. I didn't know that until today. That's really good. I'd like to welcome everyone today to what is hopefully another exciting action-packed roller coaster of achievement and fun. Well, I won't go that far. We're looking for election of a vice chair. I would like to nominate Patricia. Could I have a seconder, please?
Claire Sutton.
Oh, Claire, sorry, yes. Claire Sutton.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Councillor Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member, Children's Services, Education and Skills. I was very much hoping to actually propose Patricia, but I'm also delighted to second her.
I will defer to you, Claire, and I will second. Any other proposals? Then that is carried. Welcome. So moving on to the minutes of the last meeting, which I assume that everybody has read. This meeting is based on the assumption that we've all read the paperwork, because it's one of those meetings, if you decide to read the papers 5 minutes beforehand, you don't stand a chance. So we're working on that. Any alterations to the minutes or corrections? In which case they are approved. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest for the meeting or the subjects they're in today? There are none. We have no questions, no public participation, and no councillor questions. It's not that boring, George. And there are no urgent items, which brings us on to the work programme. George, is there anything that you want to highlight from there, or is this something that has previously been agreed and we can happily?
There's nothing.
That take forward. Okay, item 10, we are motoring through, home by tea at the latest. Future Care programme update. I said it was exciting. I said it was a really good meeting. This is, I think, one of the shining stars of what we look at the moment. Rachel, are you kicking this off?
No, I'm not, but I would agree. That's why I'm smiling at you.
Senior lead.
But it doesn't say me on the agenda.
It doesn't say you on the agenda. I am. Agenda's not something I'm very good.
I can certainly give a flavour.
John Price.
Oh, John.
John is going to present. Yeah.
Okay. I had Louise down, but okay.
It's Louise to present. Sorry, I was just going to prompt to say Louise is here.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thank you, Chair. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lou Ford. I am the Strategic Health and Adult Social Care Integration Lead for Dorset Council, working on the Future Care programme, and am the SRO on the active system visibility and active system leadership work stream of the programme. So we've been here to Health and Wellbeing Board a number of times before to give you some context to the programme and the summary of what we're trying to achieve. And the report that I'll run through with you today is designed to give you a more kind of holistic deep dive into the work streams and the work that we've completed so far and the impact of some of that work. So just to reiterate the anticipated benefits of the programme. So as everyone knows, we undertook a diagnostic last summer with the aims of looking at how to reduce the length of time people spend in a hospital setting by improving the way that we work together and our planning processes, and how we better support people to recover at home following a hospital stay. We're thinking more about our long-term care package reductions and how we improve that intermediate care and the effectiveness of our reablement. So the diagram below gives you an indication of the annual benefits. As a board, you have seen that diagram before, so I won't spend any time on it, but please do ask questions if you do have any. As you know, the programme is structured around 4 operational work streams and 2 core enabling work streams. So we'll give you an update today on alternatives to admissions. So that's around when people present in an ED department, how do we stop them entering into an acute hospital bed? The transfers of care hub, so the work that happens around the hospital discharge and getting people the right care in the right place at the right time. And our home-based and bed-based intermediate care services, which are around the reduction in community hospital beds and improving the effectiveness and the availability of our reablement services. So I'm joined on the call today by Stuart Appleby from Newton, and Stuart's going to run through for you the outputs and the impacts that we're seeing across those 4 operational work streams. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Stuart.
Sure. Hi, everyone. As I said, I'm Stuart I work for Newton, who are the sort of partner supporting the programme. Just going to give you a quick sort of flavour of some of the progress in the work streams. Again, welcome questions as we get to that point. I think in the papers it starts with the transfer of care work stream, and I think the reason for that is that's one of probably the most mature of the 4 areas so far. I think probably the real eye-catching progress since the last one, we've had a physical transfer of care hub up and running in Dorset County Hospital for a little while now, and that's where we've physically brought together teams from across different organisations, different disciplines, to really work on how do we accelerate the process of getting people from the acute hospital to the right support and hopefully getting those people home to the sort of most independent outcome for them. And we're starting to see some really encouraging signs from that, not least the sort of cultural and behavioural and ways of working that we've seen. So having Dorset Council colleagues in there from a social care perspective has been really powerful, alongside discharge coordinators. Those people are physically going out to the wards in the hospital, looking at individuals and really getting really good grip on the actions that we can take to make sure people are getting the right support, as Lou said, at the right time. So we are the sort of measures that we look at for how we see the impact of that is how long people are staying in hospital. You know, particularly those people who've got past that point where they have medical reason to be there, and we're starting to see a drop in the length of stay. So you know, we were up around sort of 10 days in April, and we're now at the point of the papers going out. We'd got that down to close to 8 days. It's actually dropped even further since then. So we're sort of just over 7-day average length of stay now, which is really important. Those few days extra of getting people out of the hospital is really important for those individuals. Now there is you know, lots of work to keep doing to further improve that and make sure we sustain those bits, but you know, there's a couple of quotes in there just to try and emphasise the positive experience that colleagues are having in that transfer of care hub. So that's been really successful, leading that in Dorset County. In the east of Dorset, we're actually going live with an equivalent location in Bournemouth next week. So people are moving into that physical location this week. So hoping to sort of see some of that benefit transfer across the wider system as well, which is really encouraging. You know, there's a number of components to that work, so multidisciplinary decision making, in particular the early discharge planning. So it's really changing the culture of getting out into the wards, collaborating with the staff on those wards, looking at, do we have clear actions in place to pull people out of those acute beds where it's not the best place for them at that point in time. So yeah, some really encouraging signs on the transfer of care part. I guess just moving on to alternative submission, and what we mean by that is people who have arrived at the front door of the acute hospital, they've arrived at A&E, they've had an escalation in their needs, they've either they've arrived themselves or they've been conveyed to the hospital. Again, real focus on getting people the right care at the right time for them, and how do we use some of those same day services rather than risk people getting admitted onto wards where they typically end up with a few days on that ward, which perhaps could have been avoided. And we know that spending time in a hospital bed where it's not necessary can have a detrimental effect to people's health, and we can see some deconditioning, particularly for older people. The big focus has been on those same-day emergency care services in the hospital. We've seen an increase in the number of people who are able to pull into those services and benefit from that and get them home. We are making sure that we're monitoring other measures, so making sure those people aren't just being readmitted to hospital later. So we are making sure that we keep a track of the sort of wider measures on the quality and the outcomes for those individuals to make sure we're not having unintended negative consequences, which is a really important thing throughout the programme. One of the other things that we're really starting to focus on as well is the use of services, particularly the hospital at home service. We're seeing that that's a really powerful service in, again, being able to get people back out of the acute hospital into an environment close, at home, but again, with the right support for them. So really looking at how we utilise the capacity and sort of value of that service. Lots of activity in the hospitals about how do we have the right resources at the front door of the hospital to really spot those individuals who are have the right criteria for those services and will really benefit from them. So again, starting to see some good progress in that space. On the home-based intermediate care bit, and I think actually Sarah Sewell might be joining or with you. I think we want to take all the credit for Sarah's been leading a lot of this work in this space. So I'm sure we'll be able to answer detailed questions as well. I think a couple of the bits I draw attention to in the home-based space is that we have quite a complex environment across Dorset with lots of different providers, many routes into these services. And actually, for the first time, we've managed to really progress the data that exists and get a clear view of where demand and capacity exists across the system. So actually being able to see where capacity is very near time from all the different providers is really important, because what we observed is people who are trying to refer people into those services are really ringing round or sending emails round, and actually we lose a lot of time, really inefficient processes that cause delays for individuals and getting their access to those sorts of care. So really good progress, I think, in terms of actually collecting data and being much more data driven as a system, which is really powerful. We've got a capacity tool that's been built and is being tested by 8 of those different providers over the coming weeks, which I think have really positive feedback on. It's a really simple tool where they can look and say capacity exists in these places at these times. It's much easier to get people to those services. We're also deploying sort of a SMART goals framework into those providers to say, like, how do we have a real goal-based progression for the individuals in things like readment services. We're in the process of deploying a really simple app for those readment workers to use so they can track progress of individuals, see that data centrally, make really quick decisions, again, to step people down out of the services once they've reached their progression goals and make sure we increase capacity for other people to benefit from that. So again, lots of progress there in a complex environment. The last one I'll touch on quickly is the bed-based intermediate care. So we've been doing a series of trials we're currently in 3 different sites at the moment. Wimborne, Coastal Lodge is another one of those. And we're starting to see some really positive, again, reductions in the length of stay of people in those what we call pathway 2 beds. So people who've been discharged from the hospital who need some bed-based support before they then hopefully get back to their home or place of residence. Just to give you a kind of example, we've seen reductions in the length of stay in all 3 of those sites. In one of them, we've actually seen length of stay come down from 31.5 days to 20 days, which is a huge difference in the amount of time people are spending in that setting. We've really focused on some of those individuals who have no criteria to reside, so haven't got a medical reason to be there, who've been there for longer than 21 days. So really looking at those, and some great people stories in that. We managed to discharge the longest length of stayer from Blandford, and it took 4 teams coming together to get there. They've been there for over 100 days, and they are now back home with the right level of support, which is, a great story for that individual. And I think another good story, I think in Wimborne, one of the community hospitals, when we started the trials a couple of weeks ago, we had 13 patients who had a medical criteria to reside, had been there for over 30 days. There's now 0 patients in Wimborne with that criteria to reside because we've been able to get back into community settings with the right support. So again, green shoots, early days, we need to scale this. And actually interesting, we had about 5, we were planning for 5 waves of delivery, as you'll see in the papers. We're currently exploring how do we accelerate that, because we are seeing some of those positive results. So how do we get the sort of scale out much quicker? I think probably just the last point I'd wanted to make on the bed-based intermediate care bit is the cultural and the engagement and colleagues who've really lent into these trials. I think we're starting to see real cultural shifts in decision making. People have really embraced the change, and massively to their credit, and in particular adult social care colleagues. They've been turning up to all of those multidisciplinary meetings. They've not just been turning up, but they've come up prepared with knowledge about what their circumstances are in the community. They've got recommendations on actions. They're being proactive in that. And I think, the Coastal Lodge sort of registered manager really wanted to call out the contribution of adult social care in that space. So I think it's just sort of showing the power of bringing the disciplines together. But actually on the front line, we're seeing real energy from people to lean into the change. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that and call out sort of colleagues' investment in supporting it. Appreciate that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There's lots of detail and data and stuff underneath that. I'll sort of hand back to you, Lee, but welcome any questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Stuart. So just the other points for us to highlight in terms of the report and the work of the programme is that working really closely with our colleagues in the voluntary community sector, particularly the Voluntary Community Sector Assembly, and we held a Transforming Health and Care event back in April. That was an opportunity for voluntary community sector colleagues to come together to learn more about the work of the Future Care programme, the future aspirations of the programme, and what the need might be moving forward. But also a really good insight into the work of the Integrated Neighbourhood Teams programme, and also how we use data and insight. So we had colleagues from the DICE, the Dorset Insight and Intelligence Service, attend to support as well. So it just shows how we're all working together as an integrated care system to improve those outcomes for people. We are working really closely with our colleagues at Care Dorset and Tricuro in terms of the intermediate care offer, and both those organisations are now actively sharing data with us into that DICE space so that we can improve our reporting and the transparency of the information that we have, and also support with the effectiveness of reablement and getting people out of reablement quicker and increasing the capacity that we have. And just for assurance, we do have, really good governance and communication mechanisms in place around the programme. So ensuring that key leadership forums are always updated, including Health and Wellbeing Board on the programme. Big thank you, a big shout out in this space to our colleagues in the BI community across Dorset, who've been fantastic in terms of really pulling out all the stops to ensure that all of the right data is flowing now into the right places, that the quality and the robustness of data has improved. So really positive there in terms of the development work in that space to get us to a single version of the truth in respect of performance across the urgent and emergency care pathway. And we're just now reaching out and talking to colleagues in the digital and the IT space around some of the other data tools that we need to support the outputs from the work streams in the programme. We do have a bid programme due to take place in July. So we will report back to Health and Wellbeing Board in September on the outputs of that, and that will be based around activity and demand and the changes that have been delivered as part of this programme. Finally, section 9 of the report gives you just the trajectory as it stands in terms of the operational benefits and the run rate that we are seeing within the programme, and the expectations for Dorset Council in respect of benefits realisation through to 29/30. So currently, programme is anticipated is costing 9 million, but will deliver £36 million worth of benefits, proportionate to the organisations across our system, and substantial amount of the costs are currently being met by our colleagues in NHS Dorset, because they will receive the greater benefits from the programme. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. I said it was exciting.
Yeah, I would actually. So it's really easy for us to sort of get into what the transactional benefit of this programme is, and some of it is about reducing length of stay, and making sure that people go home more quickly from hospital. But it's more fundamental than that for me. This is about the fact that a huge number of people who go through our system-wide urgent emergency care service do not have a good experience. And I want us to be really honest about that. They don't. They get admitted to hospital when they don't need to. When they're in hospital, they stay there for too long. And then we end up with a decompensation for older people and then long-term care. And that's not where we want to be. So this programme is about making sure that as many as possible people go through our service and have a really, really positive experience, and also is an experience that improves their health outcome. So that's the main crux of the programme, and there are a number of ways that we can do that. I think that we know as a system we are best in class nationally at avoiding admission. We are best in class at putting people through short stay assessment and out again for anybody under 65. If you're over 65, it's a very different picture, which is why we need to fundamentally change the way we work. And as Stuart said, there is a really strong link to the work that we're doing in future care and how the integrated neighbourhood teams develop. And that link, we've got to maintain that link. And there is some really close working between those two teams to make sure that we understand where the overlap is, and we're making sure we're working in concert with each other. But where we've got to so far, we're making really good progress. I'm confident that when we get to the first set of benefits being delivered later this year, they will be delivered. And the team of SROs are very focused, very dedicated, working really well together. And we've had a commitment from chief execs to make sure they have the amount of time they need to deliver on their elements of the programme.
I'd agree with that. I'd sort of add that from my perspective, this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
And that it hasn't been for so many years, that different agencies coming together for the benefit of the patient, of the resident, and just putting aside departments, putting aside titles, and just saying what's best for this person. And I love it. And particularly if I was a resident of Wimborne, I'd be delighted. Lou, could I ask maybe you link up with Tony McDougall to talk about good news for Wimborne news item?
Yeah, I can pick that up, Claire.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for that. I think it's brilliant. Jill?
Just come in.
Sorry, Councillor Jill Taylor.
Sorry, Councillor Jill Taylor. Oh gosh, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. Just picking up, I think it's a fantastic report. I think it's really, really good, and it's the way forward. What I can't hear within this report, though, is the voice of the people, the voice of our residents within it. So we think it's all good, but what do they actually think? And I think we need to at some time look at that, because there may be some people who've been discharged from hospital who, for whatever reason, weren't comfortable with being discharged from hospital, even though in the medical assessment they were fit to go home. And I think at some time we need to pick up their voices. I will just do a quick declaration of interest, because I was on the ASDEC last December and thought it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. But they were so busy. They were queuing down the corridors for it.
And that's why it's really important that we really focus some of our effort on that mission avoidance work, because there are people who end up in spaces like that and beds who actually, if we had a better assessment and turnaround process, they don't need to be there.
Yeah. And I had the acute hospital at home, which was brilliant. Yeah. So if we can get more of that.
So Stuart can answer some of that, but we, in each of the work streams, we have an approach to co-creation and co-production. So our communities and voluntary sector are engaged in designing the solutions as we move forward. And then there'll be a different stages and evaluation process that Stuart can talk about how we engage communities in that.
And the only other thing that's not in there, there's no numbers. There's targets and how we're doing proportionally, but I don't know how many people we're discharging from hospital. You know, we've got the figures, and some of that would be really useful. Certainly if we're looking at good news stories, because there's a difference between getting 10 people out and getting 100 people out.
Yeah, agree. And we've got a performance dashboard now, and we've got Stuart and the team have developed a really brilliant benefits tracker, so we can make sure that all the benefits from the original business case are being delivered. But again, Stuart can talk a bit about that if we've got time.
Stuart, you want to?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. Yeah, I think it's a really good point around the sort of scale of impact. And actually, if I was to say one of, if I look at the next sort of 2 to 3 months, our challenge and focus as a program is how do we scale the impact we're having to, I think in the trials we're seeing really positive outcomes. We need to scale that and do change at scale and at pace. And I think let's make sure we do report back on the volume of people that we are impacting and having better outcomes for. So yeah, I agree with that point. Just quickly touching on the voice of the person, again, obviously very well said. As an example, within the transfer of care part, we did a whole series of sort of people interviews and sort of person-centered research to talk to both people who had been patients, their families, carers, to kind of get their voice around the experience. We are planning to follow up and do a revisit of that sort of same interviews to sort of understand the qualitative, the experience people are having. I think there's more we can and should do. So it's a good reminder to think about the voice of the person. So we have done some of that, and we did a whole series of thinking about personas of people as to how, what are the different personas of people who experience this care. So not just thinking about the individual who has been through some of these care pathways, but the people around them and their support network and things. So thinking about it from those different, personas, as I say. But again, there's always more we should focus on that. So good reminder.
And Paula?
I just thought I'd update really that we're just in the process of putting a reference group together of voluntary community sector members to look at future care and to look at how we can get insights from the communities and their perspectives. So these are groups ranging from Prama to carer organisations right through to linking up with Thriving Communities, a project that's being run across the council. So we hope to get some of that user perspective via those third sector partners and their neighbourhood presence and their neighbourhood understanding across Dorset. And that's just being set up. I think the first session is next week.
Yes, just remind everyone who you are for the record.
Sorry, I'm Paula Bennett. I'm the Programme Director for the Voluntary Community Sector Assembly.
Don Nordberg, Dorset Community Action. I've got a couple of questions, partly for clarification, but also for future reporting. The chart in 9.1 looks to me like it's a budgeted amount, and we're into action on this. It would be helpful, I think, to see the actual figures as either a third line in this or something like that. See where we are, whether we're really getting there. Second one is an observation about the availability of spaces for people. You talked about, I think it was Stuart talked about, doing some sort of coordination with the various care providers, and that there's a software package on that. Be useful to know who's supplying that software, whose costs, how many people how many care providers are signed up on that, and what the plan is for moving that forward. Because that does seem to me, we've done at a charity that I chair in the learning disability sector in a different location. We've been doing a lot of work with customer management software to do precisely that kind of thing and speed up the allocation of places. So I'd like to see something more about how that's playing out here and what the process is behind it. The report's a little thin on that side. And it could be it's too early to do that more detailed thing, but I think by September, we should have a pretty good notion of how this is playing out.
Lou, Stuart, do you want to take those on as notes for the future?
Absolutely, I can comment very quickly. I think just to reassure, that is the budgeted plan in 9.1. We are tracking against that. Currently, we are slightly ahead of where we wanted to be in terms of the cumulative benefits, but very early days, so don't want to overstate that. But as Lou referenced, the July mid-programme review is the sort of formal point at which we will check on that, but happy to report back at the next Health Wellbeing Board on where we are against that, and we'll include real data. But just as sure as we are absolutely tracking that and slightly ahead of where we hope to be. On the sort of on the digital and the software part of it, the vast majority of the tools that we're developing are within the existing DICE platform, which is great. It's a really powerful data asset, and we're building a lot of the reporting and dashboards and tools within that. Probably the one exception to that is deploying an app around the reablement bit, which we're looking at the moment, but there's no incremental cost of that for the duration of the programme at this stage. So there's been no additional expenditure on software at this stage. Most of it's been developed internally, but again, really happy to, and I think it will be more appropriate in the next update to give more detailed updates on that.
Stuart's covered it. I was just going, as home-based intermediate care lead, I was just going to kind of come in on that particular point about the capacity tool, is that it is that internal piece. And I think the issue that we're kind of fighting within the programme at the moment is we don't have a clear picture of exactly what we need that would enable us to go out to market to purchase a system like that. So by being able to develop it in-house is allowing us to kind of work that through and test and trial as we go.
Well, my experience from the learning disability sector is that providers, the larger providers, do already have systems in place to keep track of their availability, and that somehow the two systems have to work with each other. And so just be aware of that if you weren't anyway.
Yeah, and we're focusing it in on specific providers that have contracts with us to deliver the capacity to us, just so we keep it kind of tight.
It has been something that's been on our mind for a while, but everyone's got a different system, and maybe there are benefits to everybody in using the same system but with controlled data.
One of the things we do know, Steve, is that for intermediate care, because there are a varying number of commissioning routes and providers, we're not getting best value in the system, because each provider reserves an amount of capacity that then doesn't get used. And actually, if we move to a much more simple model, we will get a lot more hours than we're currently getting. So some of those debates need to be had about how we move forward from a commissioning and provisions perspective.
Always open to that.
And if I could slip in one quick observation, and picking up on your point about the voice of the people who really are the people we ought to be caring about. I'm aware of one particular incident where, with same-day emergency care, someone was treated very well and asked to check back in after a week to make sure everything was fine and everything was moving along, and then had the case closed, although the problem was not solved. It was just looking good, and then it flared up again. And she had to go right back to the beginning of the process, go to the GP, get a GP appointment. And I mean, the end point was the wrong end point. And it almost felt to her like the hospital had closed off the line of communication for the sake of getting a statistic saying one more case completed.
Like when you're talking to the IT department. But yeah, I think readmissions is a critical factor.
Yeah. And that doesn't seem to be in the discussion here at all, that there may be readmissions for other things. It could be it's in the plan.
It's also a key point within the Better Care Fund as well.
Yeah.
If we can move on. Thank you, everybody. Isn't it, in the words of Hannibal, whatever he was in the A-Team, it's lovely when a plan comes together. What was his name? I've got Lecter in my head. But
Silence of the Lambs, the serial killer.
It was one of them.
When you're age, Steve.
There's a recommendation to be agreed. To recognise the progress to date and to reaffirm support for the Future Care Transformation Programme is our recommendations. All agreed? Absolutely. Thank you so much. Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People Annual Report. Say my eyes together, sorry. Draft, that's because I can't say it. Draft Place-Based Partnership Prospectus. Sorry, with no comedy intended, but Rachel, sorry, over to you. I can't say that.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Rachel Partridge. I'm Acting Director of Public Health and Prevention at Dorset Council, and I'm delighted to be presenting the draft place-based prospectus, recognising that this is a follow-on from the item that we brought in the March Health and Wellbeing Board. Now, the SROs for this programme of work are Matthew Bryant and Sam Crowe as Interim Chief Exec and Paula Bennett. So you will be able to spot that I'm not any of those people, but in discussion, we thought that it was really important that we continue to bring an update to the board for this Health and Wellbeing Board. I was absolutely delighted to continue to do so, to bring back to the board and recognise that there's been a lot of work and momentum and energy going around this programme of work. And it's really strong theme throughout this Health and Wellbeing Board agenda. So I didn't speak in the future care section because I knew I'd get the opportunity to speak now in reference to the great work of the future care programme as a great example of where working collectively across organisations to serve a place and to serve our residents is absolutely where we're all committed to being. So the development of the place-based partnership and the prospectus to articulate how we do that and maintain that momentum and initiative to deliver around that is absolutely what we should be doing. And it was worth bringing and really keeping the board updated and offering an opportunity to get some feedback around the draft. And I emphasise the fact that this is a draft prospectus that you'll see attached to it. The important thing is the work that's been going on to date. And I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of those of you that have already participated in 3 really high energy workshops around developing what it means to be a place-based partnership and trying to articulate and distill in a couple of pages what that means and what that looks like. So I will bring Sarah in a moment, because Sarah very skillfully tried to facilitate 3 workshops of lots of people being enthusiastic and sharing ideas about what this could do. But if I frame it in the context that since the March Health and Wellbeing Board, there have been some seismic announcements around the way that we operate as systems, and I'm very conscious that colleagues, both within the NHS, but also important developments around the work that we do within the local authority and other statutory sectors. Change is coming, and the strengthening of working at a place, working at the Dorset level, is going to become even more important. It fits in with our agenda, it fits in with the council plan and the commitment to communities for all priority. It absolutely fits and amplifies the work that we've already articulated as an integrated care partnership. And this is another step in the way of really making an opportunity to really frame that and give sense and purpose. It's also really important as us, as the Health and Wellbeing Board, to be able to see progress and have a place where the work and the delivery happens. We are very good, with our constituent members, have a really unique and important role in terms of that strategic oversight to ensure the integration of health and wellbeing for our residents. But the development of a place-based partnership and the prospectus allows a very clear place for the work to get going and to coordinate our activity and make sense of this very busy, exciting partnership landscape where we can actually learn from each other. So I'm looking to my colleague next door. So Sarah was very much involved in the workshops, bringing in experience from the Better Care Fund. Future Care was very much referenced as a really good piece of work to learn. Family Hubs has been used as an example of excellent working. So it's in that spirit of around putting a structure and a place for us to get together as a system, including the really important contributions which Paul has already alluded to in the voluntary and community sector. So that was me doing the really big picture and why we should continue to have this on the Health and Wellbeing Board this time, recognising that it's a draft, so it's an opportunity to feed in and add to the work on prospectus. So Sarah and colleagues, if you want to give a little update about the ask specifically about feedback on the prospectus.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm Sarah Longdon, I'm the Head of Service Planning in Public Health. And as Rachel said, I facilitated the workshops for the prospectus that were attended by colleagues from our organisations, from the voluntary sector, community sector, to pull this prospectus together. The aim of that being a way of just setting out the aims and ambitions of the place-based partnership while their work to establish the partnership and the mechanisms evolves. So just trying to set out those key high-level ambitions, what we're trying to do, get the energy together, very much agree, a lot of energy in the room, a lot of enthusiasm to get this underway. Some of the key feedback and comments were around, just as you say, Rachel, just want to get the work going opportunity and a place to come together and have those conversations, collaborate. We talk a lot about co-production, absolutely, and having that space where it's coordinated and brought together, rather than where, for example, some smaller organisations might need to go to different places multiple times. That the partnership, the place-based partnership is where that is facilitated in a more coordinated and joined up way. So the prospectus, the idea behind the prospectus was as to have something very concise and high level that sells some of that to get the momentum going and get things moving, so that we can start that collaboration. Fully aware that obviously everyone's very, very busy, so attendance was, we couldn't have all our partners and colleagues in all sessions, but I think we had a good representation across the board. And this is an iterative process. Building up the place-based partnership is something that doesn't happen overnight. You know, we've got lots of good examples that we're hearing about already, where the work is there, and building up that collaboration space and the opportunity to do more, amplify, and build up that work will take time. So we want to iterate that. And the prospectus itself, this is just a first draft, and the ask of the board is for comment on feedback on where we are, what we're trying to achieve here. And you know, all our organisations are part of this. This isn't a new topic, but we want to just get it into its next phase. And as some of our colleagues in the voluntary sector say, just get the work done. So that's where we've got to. We have a draft. It's just a couple of pages. It's the ambition. It's the headlines. And yeah, welcome your comments and feedback. I don't know, Paula, if you wanted to add to anything. You're a key player in the sessions as well.
No, I think you've covered it really well. I mean, I think for a lot of us in the room, the prospectus is kind of setting out the why. Why are we doing this, and what do we hope to achieve? Which leads us nicely then into working out how. But if you haven't clarified your why, if you haven't got your reasons for doing it and your overarching aims, then you're going to go off in 100 different directions. So the prospectus is a good guiding document, I think.
And invite thoughts and comments.
But I welcome this, thank you. Great document. I think there's something in it for me about signalling a direction of travel to self-driven communities, and that means us ceding some of our authority, which is really difficult, but I think that's a really important part of the journey. The other thing I would say is in the appendix, that's not the way our health costs work. So I don't want anybody running away and thinking we've saved 340,000 by something that's happened in this, because it's not how it works. So it's better that we just stay away from that rather than trying to quantify it, because the reality is that probably saves 2 beds, and unless they're next to each other, well, even if they're next to each other, unless there's 6 beds that come down, we don't save anything apart from non-pay costs, because it's not how costings work for beds. So yeah, I'd stay away from any of that, because it just gets really complicated and it misleads people. But I think it's a really good paper. There's just something for me about how we evolve into that space of communities being the driving seat, not officers.
Yeah, and I think if we evolve this and iterate the documentation and the structure around it, but the main thing is keep everyone around the table working together and building it up. Yeah. These examples are a really good way of doing that.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Paul?
Paul Dempsey, my camera on. Paul Dempsey, Executive Director of Children's Services. There's a line in there that says, although financial constraints got tighter or are real, partners still have the appetite to do this work, come together. And I would have thought it's the other way around, really. I think there should be financial advantages to coming together as a partnership. I'm not pretending to understand all the sort of implications of the health budget, but we should be coming together to overcome some of those financial hurdles, shouldn't we? And I'm sure some of us have got some good examples of where that's worked. We've certainly worked with, you know, partners in health and police to create good services and outcomes, but also with the VCS sector and partners. And I think that we've got examples in children's services of investing money in VCS partner organisations and getting more from them delivering services, you know, the community delivering services to the community for better value than us, I guess. So I just wanted to say that, and I think there's lots of potential in this sort of model moving forward. Paula?
I was just going to agree completely with what was just said. I think the benefits that can come out of the project are numerous, and some of those will definitely be financial. I think in the document it's alluding to the fact that even though there are constraints on each of the services to provide capacity to put into the project, there was a willingness to commit to the project. So I think that's what that's in reference to, is more to do with that. Even though all of the services that were present at the workshops are feeling financial constraints at the moment, that because we know the benefits are there, because we know it is the right way forward, time will be committed and resource would be put into it.
Thank you. Mark Tyson, Corporate Director for Commissioning Improvement for Adults for the Council. I suppose I'm reading it thinking, so there's a bit in page 27 that talks about some of the projects that, you know, the partnership and using the principles set out in the prospectus will support and so on. So I think the bit that it feels silent, but I wonder if it's worth flushing out. Is this some form of a call to arms around what out there is happening that needs to, in a sense, be brought into the consideration of a place-based partnership for more join-up? Because it talks about integrated neighbourhood teams, future care, but I'm thinking things like the day opportunities work we're doing. We very much want to shift from having services that operate in buildings, in places, to having places that facilitate connection and community. So are we expecting then that when the report comes to Cabinet in November, for the next stages on that after our consultation, the principles set out in the prospectus we would expect to be seen as part of the setting of the context for the work, and just bits like that that start to use the language of the place-based partnership and its prospectus in how we bring forward projects and ideas. And I suppose the reason I'm asking that question is it's easy to think about it in the day opportunities space, but library strategy, if there's capital works on public realm, all of those things in a sense could be framed in these terms and start to be this bigger, more ambitious, preventive agenda with health and social care down the end of the story, as it were. But I suppose do we need to be more explicit about that ask through the board to partner organisations to take these and start applying them and thinking about how it shapes the decision making and the way you construct projects and ambition. Yeah.
About 30 years ago, I remember those days, last century.
Well, we know you do because you've already mentioned the 18.
That's very true, actually. Oh, those were
obviously I don't know who.
We used to call this basically a voluntary sector compact, and it was the terms of reference by which you dealt everything that you did, which always worked really well to start off with and then tailed off because there were exceptions and we didn't quite mean it like that, and it was open to multiple interpretations of things. And I suppose fundamental to all of this needs to be the spirit behind it rather than the words that are on the paper. And I think this group particularly, but all groups are exemplars of that spirit of coming together. Having said that, I really hate the word place-based because it's actually a sort of King's Fund medically sort of based term. It's not something that the person in the street knows what we're talking about. They're talking about the library. Are they talking about the town square? I much prefer the word community because everyone thinks they know what community is, except we have many different versions of it. So I have mentioned this before, as you know. So I warned you. Community-based partnership works for me in terms of communicating better than place-based, because I still don't quite understand what place-based means in its technical terms.
Yes, and if I could just, so yes, remember we did have that debate at one of the sessions. There was some views that where do we draw the line? Because community could be so broad. And I get your point, and language is really important, and you know we have to be very, very clear in what we're describing, so that everyone can understand what we're trying to do and how it works. There's a school of thought about, you know, is that going to be too broad and misleading if we're community, whereas place-based got quite a specific definition, as you say.
That's part of my problem.
Yes.
I want to say, because I think part of this is because we consistently use language that we as professionals understand that is not necessarily how our communities speak. And I think, look, if you talk about place in terms of community, the boundary is really clear, it's your local authority boundary. What's more important to communities is the neighbourhood, that they recognise that they're living where the assets are. And that sort of goes to your point, that we talk a lot about that phrase in the report that says, even though we're all constrained for cash, we're all committed to do it. I hate that, because the reality is, if we look at this from a different perspective, it's not about what we haven't got, it's what we have got. And if we put all that together and we make best use out of it to meet the needs of the community, we come at this from a completely different perspective. Because honestly, I mean, NHS probably hate me for saying that. We've got a massive savings target this year, but the NHS isn't cash constrained. It just needs to use its money differently. And so that we need to, I think we need to come at this from a different perspective that says, if we look at the broad agenda that we might want to think about at neighbourhood level and place level, what are actually the resources that we all bring to this together, and how can we spend them differently to deliver, what are our statutory responsibilities, but more about how do we co-create solutions that communities can be part of and lead, and we would get a different answer.
Rachel?
And that's why we brought this to the Health and Wellbeing Board. That's exactly what we want. We want to flush out that debate, because I could sit in a darkened room and write what I think and bring a terms of reference and kill the energy, kill the momentum, and it not be produced and articulated and clear, because it is absolutely about that. I think there's something about us as a role of the Health and Wellbeing Board with a health and wellbeing strategy for Dorset, and it's for Dorset residents, and Dorset residents live in Dorset, but they also live in their village or their town or their community. So recognising that, there's something specifically about trying to put a framework around how we use our resources. And I think because we have challenges, we can't afford duplication, we can't afford not knowing what's going on in day opportunities because we happen to be doing something on engaging the population in North Dorset about something else, but they live in the same village. So it's absolutely motivated by that, and it's the right thing to do. And demonstrating from other key pieces of work that are going to be brought to this board, we know it works better, it's the right thing to do, it's the right approach, it's the best use of time, gets communities integrated and part of driving what we're doing. But there is something about us being that strategic board for Dorset, overseeing the integration of health and social care to support the health and well-being of our population. So it's trying to tack it to having some strategic priorities or examples of work where we have the ambition to work close together because it supports our priorities, which is driven by consultation with residents, because that's part of the integrated care partnership approach. We want to hear, we've sought feedback in all of this, but it's having that space where we can get together and actually understand where there are cross-cutting themes and where we can build on those synergies. So it's a prompt deliberately to galvanise, continue this discussion, continue debate, refine our approach, endorse it to make it work, because ultimately we are looking to want to devolve, share align pooled budgets where it makes sense to do so to support health and wellbeing. But we have to start with something. And I didn't want to come with a list, but the feedback was we need to give some examples of what currently happens. So we're not starting from a blank piece of paper, because the danger of coming with a blank piece of paper is
You just stare at it. Yeah.
so, yeah.
So community conversations. Paul, you want to do it?
Yeah, on the place-based sort of community-based discussion of language and everything, we obviously deliver as one local authority area children's services, but we also recognise that within that there are very different communities. The north is different from Chesel, for example, and so we deliver locality services in our 6 different localities. We have family hubs dotted around, which sort of reference to family hubs as an example in the paper, where multidisciplinary professionals come together to deliver services to families. Like extend that a bit more to adults, and we have local alliance groups in each of the localities, independently chaired, which pulls together organisations, VCS organisations in that area, and statutory partners, etc., to deliver not just in the local authority area, but in those smaller sort of communities where it's recognised that there is different needs. So that's the model that we're in.
Other feedback? I think generally positive, I feel. A good step forward. There's a whole load of what now that follows on to it, but you have to start off with this, don't you? Other feedback, thoughts?
What's the next step? What happens next?
Well, we brought it here to get feedback from health and wellbeing board members to indicate the direction of travel around the prospectus per se. One element of it we can obviously refine and reshape based on this conversation and feedback, which we welcome it through whatever means. But that's just the prospectus. In terms of ways of working, we obviously will need to work around the mechanism of how to bring this to life.
Okay,
So
let me be a little more precise about the question I was asking. What's next with the prospectus? Is the prospectus, assuming it's approved today as a way of going forward, is that going to be communicated to whom? Through what channels? In what time frame?
In terms of the feedback, so I'm not seeking approval of this prospectus today. I'm seeking feedback as part of the work around developing our thinking together. In terms of the documentation, I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's a statement of intent for us working together collaboratively. I don't think it's necessarily for public.
It's a partnership document. I think it's a way of coming together around and having something to hang ourselves on, to say, right, this is why we're here, for our partners, people who have been involved so far, but others in Dorset as well, to get involved. But I think there was a very clear view. We don't want to wait for some sort of formality and process to be able to keep the work going and keep the conversation going. As I say, this is an iterative process. I think there was a very strong desire to keep the conversation.
I'm asking the question partly because the organisation I'm here representing is a prospective partner.
Yes.
I want to see what we're going to do with it. Where's this going? Because it seemed to me that the document was a statement of intent, yes, but to get something out of it needs the next step, which is why I asked for what's the next step.
Just mentions it in the report about sort of building up the mechanism for coming together, but actually the coming together is just as important to have the conversation and sharing our ideas and enthusiasm and where do we want to start and what's next.
I mean, would you like us to get in touch with you about how to put this into action, for example? That's a potential next step. Is it coming from potential partners to you, or are you going out to partners?
That has been part of the process for the last
Yeah.
3 or 4 meetings. But Patricia?
Yeah, I've only attended the last one, so.
No, there's been a sub working group. That's
Oh, the sub working
yeah.
group, yes. I haven't seen those, but.
I'm a little bit worried now, if I'm honest, because it feels like what we're talking about is the partnership, which is predominantly organisations, rather than this being driven by the community where we are the enablers and support. Because to be honest, I'm not really bothered what the partners think, and I'm one of them. I'm more bothered about what the community need and what they tell us they need, and how we then progress with the delivery of the supporting and enabling of communities to get what they need through the partnership. And I think that's why probably a colleague over there is talking about how we're going to share these principles with the community, because they are the people that matter. They're the people that we're here to serve. So there's a question in my mind around now the membership of the group, and have we got enough, not just colleagues from Paul and the VCC Assembly, but have we got enough people on that partnership? It means it really is community driven, because that's one of the 3 principles of the IPP strategy. And what is the next phase for the Health and Wellbeing Board? And I get the fact that the development of the relationships need to be iterative, but what doesn't need to take very long is a shared piece of work with community that says, what is this partnership going to focus on? And to me, that's what sits under the Health and Wellbeing strategy, and that's what the Health and Wellbeing Board need to see. And that can't be as long as a piece of string. And the 10-year plan is going to be published at the beginning of July, more than likely on the NHS birthday. It's going to be heavily, and it's the Health of the Nation plan, it's not the NHS plan. So it's going to be heavily grounded in place and neighbourhood working, and what does that look like? And then what's the population health outcomes that you want to deliver? And the people around this room and the community is so much more important to that than we are in health, because we can do 10% of it. The rest is down to what local government do and communities do together. So there's something about tying us down to the draft of a programme of work that comes back to the Health and Wellbeing Board that says, this is how we're going to shape the work, and these are the population health benefits that we're all, whatever we're expecting to see through this co-creation of better housing, better employment, or whatever we're doing in place that really gets underneath the skin of that. And I probably made it lots more complicated for you than you attended, Rachel, but I think if we don't start thinking like that, we might take a false direction.
Mark?
Yeah, I think there's it feels like there's a couple of strands there, isn't there, that sketch the work out for the next couple of months. One is the Health of the Nation, or whatever it's going to be called. That's the Black's from the past.
And World Class Commissioner. It's now called Strategic Outcome-Based Commissioner. It's the same thing.
I suppose there's that context piece. We're working on, as corporately, the Communities for All, and putting more flesh on the bones of that to come to cabinet. So that's another piece that again we'll have an opportunity to bring loads of themes together that are definitely in this wheelhouse. There is a question then about perhaps more of a community conversation about what this looks like and how it feels. And then maybe that all comes back through into the autumn to be the next iteration of the sort of, or the flesh on the bones of this. And at the same time, of course, the actual formation of the partnership. There's a reference in the report to the difficulty at the moment of being really clear about who's in it and what that looks like and how it works. So by that point, then you've got almost a sketch of a work programme together with the people in the room, together with a wider context for the strategic intent.
Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Alice speaking, Corporate Director for Commissioning and Partnerships in Children. And I was just going to add, there's something also about the behaviours and the practice principles that our communities and other partners can expect from us within this, and it's not going to be as simple as we, potentially not as simple as we can pool everything, make everything straightforward, because we all have various different things that we have to do, but there might be principles, if I put it only in a commissioning context, that we will do certain things in that space. We'll deliver flexibly, we'll spend our Dorset pound well, we'll try and spend it on Dorset providers or within the local economy, if that's the best thing to do. And you know, we often have a practice principle in frontline operations, which throughout things, which is kind of with you, never without you. Are we also going as far as to say that's here in terms of some of the principles in working with our communities, because individually, exactly, all off. But,
Paul, and then Claire.
The summary in the report talks about us coming together to deliver a number of programs, place-based programs, and I suppose on the next steps bit, do we have an idea? Do we have some examples of what kind of, or what specific examples of place-based programs we want to deliver, or do we have to do the work with the community, different communities, to reach out to and say what should we be working on as priorities, as place-based programs, etc., etc. So it gives some examples of things we've started to do. So I just wondered if we had some practical examples that we could just actually, some of them, get on with and do. If we
some of them we're already doing.
Get on and do
developing the partnership.
There are questions, and then I can.
Okay, Claire.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'm Councillor Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member, Children's Services, Education and Skills. I've been deliberately keeping quiet because I didn't want to put a dampener on this, but I have some quite significant concerns about this, which I think partly explains why we're having quite a difficult conversation. In brief, my background is in the voluntary sector. I was also an NHS non-executive director, and obviously I've been a councillor for a number of years. So I've seen this conversation in a number of forums over well over a decade, and we all know what we want. We all know we want us all working together to deliver the best we can, making the best use of money and delivering what people want and what people need. So it all starts with what people want and what people need, and obviously Patricia's alluded to that's the starting point. So what I see that we're talking about here, irrespective of whether we call it place-based or community-based, is what we're talking about is not a top-down thing. We're talking about delivery mechanisms. This isn't a reinvent the wheel. This is how we deliver services that we've identified as being needed. So I prefer us to think of it as a delivery mechanism. And I'd also, maybe it helps if we think of it in terms of more bottom up. So what Paul's outlined in terms of what we're doing in children's services is, you know, we've listened to families, we've listened to kids, we've decided what we need, and then we've decided that the place-based or the community-based or whatever we're going to term it is actually the best mechanism for delivering that. Now, it would be great if we could do that in adults. It'd be great if we could do that in all walks of every public service delivery that covers every sector. However, I fear that if we try and do this as an overarching top-down thing, we will end up really not delivering very much. I'm sorry, that's possibly not the most optimistic take on this conversation, but I feel that that's why this conversation is so difficult, actually. And the reason it's so difficult, I mean, the fact it's been going on forever is kind of explains why it's so difficult. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Have a response and then we'll move on to the next.
Thank you. And this has been really helpful and absolutely lies at the heart of how does Dorset Health and Wellbeing Board articulate the way that we work to galvanise, use the resources across all of the assets that we have to our individual organisations, our constituents, our residents, take all the feedback, because we all hear, we all ask, we all connect with communities to understand what it means to live in Dorset. Really, really important. And I want to really clearly state that the whole purpose for bringing the prospectus was to keep the discussion about how do we work to deliver for the people of Dorset as a health and wellbeing board and constituent aid partners. That's fundamentally what it is. The prospectus is a device to make sure that we pay attention and we can articulate, we have the elevator pitch of why we need to work together and how we can work differently we've got worked examples. So Paul, to pick up your question, absolutely. And people that were in the workshops were bringing examples of the great work that they are doing as Dorset Children's Services around local alliance groups, or delivering around future care, or what actually day opportunities was mentioned, you'll be pleased with it. But there was so much learning between the officers and BCS colleagues who were great, and Paula, I'm going to name check you and colleagues for really pushing us and challenging us. But this is about delivery. This is about making a difference. This is about doing stuff and making a difference and delivering services in a different way, much more consistency. And you think you're holding us to account? This has been brought to invite that. And actually, it was much more of a animated and challenging discussion and workshops for the three workshops, quite rightly so, because it's about making a difference. So yes, we do need to have outcomes. We need to have performance metrics. We need to bring back a framework on how we're going to mobilise, or how do we devolve budgets, or how do we work in specific. But actually, we're doing it in areas so we can share. We can use the example of LAGS and learn from how that was implemented to do it differently. Integrated neighbourhood teams was one of the key bits of work. And if Matthew was here, I'm sure the presentation would have a very different slant to it. But that is a fundamental different way of working for the health system, neighbourhood health being a context. So how do we collectively bring all of our assets to understand how we can help deliver that, to change it, to improve it for the health of our Dorset residents, because we've got experience working on day opportunities or local. So it is hard. Councillor Sutton, I share your experience, and I am hence motivated to make sure that we have the opportunity to do this well and continue to amplify where it's working well and build on that, because there are really good examples that we are all aware of, and invite that into the space. So it's not a concept, it's happening, but it's about making that visible.
So for an elevator pitch, that's a pretty tall building. But thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that goes into it, because you're stitching together the views of so many different people. Sometimes you can lose focus in, because you're trying to include everything. So look forward to sort of like the next stage, and it being a part of every policy, a part of every tender, a part of every engagement that we do. But I think we need to move on. Jill, final word?
It was just a thought. I mean, this is all talking about concepts. We're all talking, if I'll be honest, sort of fluffy words. When are we likely to be able to see an action plan, something actually solid that we can discuss? Because yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the prospectus. I think it's a really good document. I think some of the language isn't good within it, because the people don't understand that. But I don't think anyone would object to it. But it's the detail that I'm interested in, because if we're sat here this time next year, and we haven't got an action plan based under this with really key things within it, then we're not getting anywhere.
Agreed.
Which picks up on your point as well. You're here to do stuff.
That's next.
That's very much, you know, the next stage to build that up. Well, we can start, you know, we nothing stopping us making a start on this, and as you say, there's lots of ideas and existing things that we can in.
And actually, there is work happening. That's what we need to include. We need to be clear. So I completely agree, and that would be part of the next steps in terms of an action plan, the outcomes that we're working on, agreed priorities, and delivering against. And that is
Well,
the
I'd
next
be
step.
happy to have a conversation about this, or to facilitate a conversation with DCA if you want to get another thing going. Just an offer.
There has already been that process that has gone through, but I think it needs to be ongoing.
Yeah,
And so regular touch points as well. So rather than reinvent the wheel again, and then all of a sudden it will be a year. we need to be pushing forward. But if I draw a line under it there, otherwise we'll just carry on. I think, thank you very much for the work that's gone into it. Just now it's time for the Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People Annual Report 24-25.
Hi, I think Claire's going to introduce it and then pass to Alice.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I hadn't thought about it like this before, but actually I think this paper is really pertinent to our previous discussion. In a really positive way, and I'd very much like to know what Patricia thinks, but maybe it's a different forum for that conversation. So, as some of you may know, I've been the chair of the Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People for just over a year now. It's been an extraordinary privilege, and this really is a co-production, a genuine co-production with colleagues across health, education, police, the voluntary sector, and beyond. So it's all written down there, and from what I can see, and I hope the partners agree, it's our joint annual report. You know, it really actually is delivering. And that's because the partnership is so strong. And also I think the plan is really good. The plan, it's a 10-year plan. The fact it's across 7 domains, it's really clear what the partners have come together to try to achieve. And so obviously the report sets that out. So Alice is going to give the details, but I'm just going to, obviously it's been quite a busy 12 months and in children's services. The Families First for Children Pathfinder has been really exciting and going really well. We've had positive outcomes from several recent inspections, not only Ofsted, there are other ones, and this is all a testament to all these partners. So this is kind of, you know, well, it's not place-based, but it's all organised. Well, actually, it is place-based as well. It's place-based and it's organisations all working together. So having said all that positive stuff, I think it's 46 of the 92 actions are on target. Obviously, some of those are actions which will never be completed. You know, they're ongoing actions which continue. The report fleshes out what, you know, not the actions but the outcomes. So we're only 2 years into the plan. And given the progress we've made, we're already having conversations about, you know, in what areas we might possibly consider expanding it or our ambitions. So the plan remains very much a live document. So having maybe not being as positive as I could have been about the last paper, that my positivity about this paper maybe suggests that our previous paper, you know, there's a way to transform it into something wonderful. Over to Alice.
Thanks, Claire. So I'm not going to, you've received the report, you've got the papers. I'm going to take you through a bit of intro and highlights. So as Claire's already detailed, the report really tries to articulate and outline the progress we've made in delivering the Children and Young People's Family Plan over the last year, reflects the strengths in Dorset's multi-agency partnership and its commitment to improving outcomes for children and young people and their families. So highlights, Claire's already noted one, Dorset Council's Children's Services have been rated outstanding by Ofsted in March 2025, and members of the Strategic Alliance who played a key role specifically in the reform work were alongside us in our welcome presentation to Ofsted, and this really set the scene for what inspectors would see and hear through their field work. In terms of speaking to our education colleagues, speaking to other health colleagues, etc. It really allowed them a window into our partnership. And the Strategic Alliance in that partnership, the strength of that space has given us that really strong foundation of the work we've done over the last year. And Claire has already mentioned, as you know, we were selected as one of 3 Wave 1 Pathfinders for the Families First for Children programme. And that really allowed us to move further and evolve and enhance our locality-based delivery more than we had already, and really take a role nationally and regionally on how the reform guidance was going to be shaped, and is now it was published in March 25, the Families First Partnership, in terms of the guidance that is to all children's services around the reform that they are expected to make over the next year. And we've really worked over the last year to support the Department of Education and provide support in that development, and now support nationally in the rollout across that children's social care reform. in terms of specific areas that I'm going to take you through, I'm not going to dwell on all of them, but I'm just going to highlight a few things specific that I think I want good to highlight. Sorry. So in terms of our early years space and school readiness, we don't currently have, we've got a strong multi-agency support through family hubs and early years advisory teams. We've got good progress on the work that we've been doing around school readiness and really supporting settings to ensure that children are ready for school or that their needs are identified earlier. In terms of youth work and that engagement space, through Pathfinder, we've really expanded our targeted youth work offer that's really supporting our schools. And we've had specific focus around targeted support for our young carers and our care experienced young people, including pathways to employment and training. In our fostering space, we've seen continued growth and development in our Mockingbird and the development of peer support networks for foster families. And we've also looked in our care experience space, increasing our housing options there. In the education and belonging space, one of the successes of Paul mentioned earlier, our local alliance groups, which are the local embodiment of our strategic alliance. And we've continued the de-delegation of funds into that space to enable projects and community-led pieces of work. And a really successful piece in that space was a peer mentoring programme that was led through education and funded by the LAG Fund, and that reached over 500 pupils in Weymouth and Portland and supported their move from primary into secondary school. We've continued to embed the engage schools in EBSA, which is emotionally based school avoidance training, enabling them to better support children and families. And in terms of that real delivery of local family help, as I've described, we've continued to develop that family help offer through our localities, continue to work in our family hub programme and the interface and opportunities to go further across directorates and health through the integrated neighbourhood work. And we've also, as I've alluded to, had another successful year of programmes through that funding that goes to the local alliance groups for community-led intervention support that might be community-led, it might be education-led, but always comes from across that, from across a range of partners and community members. In terms of our contextual safeguarding, our multi-agency arrangements in that reform space have really been praised for the responsiveness and coordination and response to keeping children safe at a place-based level, particular reference to the work we've been doing around context in terms of spaces and the assessment of a place to work across agencies to support young people. And we're really developing our child's rights approach, and we're also looking at how that knits together with the work that's being done through education in terms of that rights-based, I can't get my words out, rights-based approaches. And as you know, we are working across the council to embed that throughout the way we work. So over the next year, we'll continue to look, as Claire said, and revise those delivery plans underpinned by strong steering groups and strengthen that community-based and loop in terms of feedback and ensure that the voices of children and people and families remain central to our decision making, and look forward to another successful year over 25-26 to bring that report back to you next year. So that's a very short whistle-stop tour into, I said 25-26, I meant 26-27. No, yeah, 25-26, sorry.
I'm
getting my
years
years.
ago,
Getting my years. So a whistle-top tour in terms of 24-25.
That's just fantastic. And to coin a phrase, outstanding in so many ways. We are to note the report, but does anyone want to bring anything out?
May I? Yeah.
Of course.
Ofsted, really important external scrutiny, went out of their way to highlight the strength of the partnership. So it's called Children's Services Inspection, but it is inspecting us as a partnership. as well. So I just wanted partners to hear that and feel that, and it was an outcome for all of us as partners. So thank you for everybody's engagement in that. The Families First for Children Pathfinder, we were the first three, one of the first three councils in the country. That strategy, government strategy, we were testing and learning it. That is about partnership and prevention. And so we've been leading the country on partnership and prevention. We've developed a good model. Ofsted thought it was successful, clearly, from what they looked at. So that's, again, a shout out and a thank you to the work of us lot as a partnership, not just a standalone. And I suppose I'm trying to link those two comments I've just made there with the previous item about partnership. So I'm just, you know, it's really good, the partnership work we've been doing. We want to build on it. We've got really practical examples of health visitors and school staff and police working together. We've got our family hubs delivering now in a sort of multidisciplinary way. We have multidisciplinary family health services. We are soon, hopefully, to have colleagues from the CAMS Gateway sort of service joining our social care front door. We have listened to families. They said, we don't want to keep telling our story to different people. So lots of people went to the CAMS front door. Really high proportion of those come to our front door as well in a short period. So if we join together, one front door, it's a sort of positive partnership. So yeah, thank you.
I think Children's Services is a jewel in the crown for Dorset. It's phenomenal, and it's much to be applauded. Thank you. Moving on to item 13, Better Care Fund end of year reporting template in 25-26. A lot of paperwork again, but again, for me, this is just another example of how it should be done. A very close working relationship between social care and with NHS that produces real significant results to real people. And I love this little bit of the meeting, but then again, I'm a data geek, so I would say which would kick off.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name's Sarah Sewell. I'm head of service for Older People's Commissioning and our Better Care Fund lead for Dorset Council. Becky Whale, colleague from Dorset NHS, was on the line, but unfortunately she's had to just pop off to another meeting. So she was wanting to kind of join for the presentation in case there are any questions, but I'll kind of take us through. So kind of crammed quite a lot of paperwork into this presentation, so I've kind of tried to focus the presentation just on the high level elements of the templates that you've got in your reports pack, but really want to focus on bringing it to life a little bit. So we're really focusing on for 24-25 in particular, what we've delivered to Dorset's residents, and also I've got a case study just about an individual who was supported through a reablement bed. So I'll just kind of focus on some of that if that's okay, and we can work it through. So as I kind of mentioned, the documents that we've got for your endorsement today, we've got for the 24-25 year-end templates. There's Appendix A in your pack, which is that template that we submitted to NHSE back at the beginning of June. And you'll be familiar with the templates. Follows a sort of similar approach where we've had to report on our actual performance and provide some narrative around our metrics, demands and capacity, and the monies that we spent and the outputs, as they're called, which are the individuals or care placements that we've purchased, as an example. So in 24-25, we reported spend around over £153 million of funding within our Better Care Fund. All of those monies were spent in line as we planned. There was an overspend within our integrated community equipment service due to higher demand than was forecast. There's a little bit of extra detail in your report pack at 4.2 of the report there. In relation to the plan for 25-26, looking forward, there's appendices B to E there for you to review, and we submitted those to NHSE on the 24th of April. We mentioned at the last meeting the new policy framework for 25-26, where we've got kind of two differing sort of focuses for the BCF objectives. So a sort of shift is now to a reform from support to shift from sickness to prevention, and reform to support people living independently and at home rather than in hospital. So in Dorset, we already have well-developed plans around prevention services and enhancing our community-based initiatives. So we believe that we've submitted a strong plan that meets the requirements for 25-26. You will have noted in the paperwork that we do have an ongoing dispute, financial dispute between the council and NHS Dorset, that we may need us to revisit the plan should a resolution not be found. So that's why we've got one of the recommendations in the report. Just moving on to so what difference did we make to Dorset residents last year? So I've just aligned some of these figures to the objectives of BCF last year. So the right care, in the right place at the right time. So in terms of respite for carers, 652 short breaks were provided to individuals, provided them with some care to enable their main carer to have some time away from for themselves. So that's really important for that carer to be able to maintain balance between their caring responsibilities and meeting their own wellbeing needs, allowing them to maintain their caring role longer term. We also have a number of our health and social care professionals that effectively those staffing teams are funded from the BCF. So that again enables people to receive support either at home or closer to home through support from our district nurses, from rehabilitation teams, occupational therapists and social workers. And then at the point in someone's life when residential care or a nursing placement is the right thing for them, we've managed to fund nearly 1,300 care and nursing home placements through our BCF funds this year. Then just a quick focus on promoting independence. So through adaptations to people's homes, which is part of the Disabled Facilities Grants and Minor Works, just over 480 people's homes have had alterations made to them so that people can live and they can remain at home more independently. Those kind of range in scale, as you would imagine. So it can be a really small installation such as a handrail or an access ramp, or more kind of structural changes such as stair lifts, wet floor showers, and other kind of alterations and extensions that enable that person to remain at home quite often with their family. We've talked quite a lot about technology enabled care through previous reports, but just wanted to kind of again try and bring that to life a little bit. So we are really seeing that kind of rise in sorts of tech that we're able to deploy to support people. And the real focus around this is that it really enables people to have to live their life with less restrictions around their daily lives. So predominantly we've installed care lines into older people's homes in the main. However, there's also a kit that supports people, younger people, particularly around prompts and alerts that help them manage their daily routine. And again, that allows people to live with less intrusive one-to-one support. So they're remembering to take their medicine, remembering what they've got on their schedule for the day. And other examples in that kind of technology-enabled care space include bed leaving sensors, so that supports informal carers at night. They know if their loved ones have left their bed, they can have a better night's sleep themselves because they know they're alerted if that person wakes. Or a tracker which allows somebody to maintain their independence. They're still able to go out and about their daily routine, but actually it offers their family greater peace of mind because they can look and check where their loved one might have gone to, or if they haven't come home, they've got that kind of extra safety feature in there as well. So really kind of making a difference for people. And then just finally in the kind of the statistics, if you like, we've already referred to kind of in the place-based appendices, there was some reference to the recovery and community resilience contracts, but they were partially funded last year through the BCF. We supported nearly 2,000 people during that year. A high proportion of those people went on to not need long-term care after their recovery, generally from following hospital discharge, and where care was needed. Generally, people's independence has improved so that their care needs are less, and there's always an option to introduce, again, equipment and technology to kind of reduce that kind of intrusive one-to-one support where possible. I just wanted to kind of just share, if you don't mind, just a quick case study. I'll just read it out to you just to kind of really bring it to life. So this is about a lady that I'm going to call Susan, who was supported through our reablement bed. So following a hospital stay during 2 falls at home, Susan was discharged to a reablement bed at Castleman Plus. She was experiencing some mild confusion and heightened anxiety and needed support with her mobility and personal care. Working together with the local integrated community rehabilitation team, Care Dorset staff provided personalised care, emotional encouragement and daily reablement activities and exercises that enabled Susan to regain confidence and independence. With the the introduction of some basic equipment such as a pill popper to make it easier for Susan to get her medication out of the packaging, and some other aids to help her to prepare food and drink safely, Susan became self-sufficient in daily routines and medication management. She was then able to leave Castleman Plus and return home, initially with a small package of care from the community reablement team, but she was confidently mobile and managing her care independently back closer to home with her friends and family. So I just wanted to share that as an example of a successful reablement kind of experience for somebody, but actually kind of highlighting where the BCF has supported those different services that have kind of come together around that person to enable that independence longer term. So just look, finally, just to kind of look ahead to the 25-26 plan, because there's been a few changes in how we've sort of populated the plan this year. I just wanted to kind of just bring your attention to those. So within Appendix C, you should see that we've been able to reduce the number of lines that we've got. So I think we had about 46 lines. We've got them down to 33, which, as much as there's still a lot of lines on there, that feels like quite an achievement because it was really quite a lengthy document. So we've managed to consolidate those funding lines. Keeping several kind of key schemes in place, which I've kind of already alluded to, but support for carers continues, our tech offer continues, those professional resources continue to be funded from the DCF, and our reablement and recovery focused arrangements also continue. In recognition of the shift to sort of prevention and independent living, we have added in our Dorset Integrated Prevention Partnership, which is our BCSE-led contract. We have needed to reduce the number of reablement beds this year by a small number, but that's to enable us to continue our investment in our home-based care. And we have included some additional investment lines in our birth to settled adulthood service, recognising that we want to make our BCF in Dorset about all age commissioning. There's also kind of reference in, particularly in the narrative document, which I think is Appendix D of your pack, reference to the system-wide transformation work within future care and integrated community neighbourhoods. That is the kind of, they're the enablers that will enable us to sort of get that improved performance in those prevention approaches, or in some cases it's referred to as sort of left shift, but looking at how we can kind of develop that place-based partnership as well. There has been a small change also in how we report our metrics, so a slightly different focus around emergency admissions, delays and residential admissions remains, and we're encouraged to kind of implement more detailed monitoring at a local level and moving forward. That brings me to just to touch back on the recommendations. So looking today, please, for endorsement of the funding template for last year, the plan looking ahead to 25-26, and just that note that we may will need to revise the plan pending resolution of the ongoing financial dispute.
Thank you very much. Can I ask for just to, what was up on the screen a second ago?
Oh, sorry, do you want me to throw it back in? Sorry.
It was very useful, thank you.
Sorry, Steve.
Just in case of any concern, the financial dispute is a fraction of 1% of the overall budget. It's something we just have to mention to you. Jill.
Can I just do a declaration of interest, please, because I'm in receipt of direct payments as a carer, so I won't take part in this. Thank you.
I don't think there's really anything to comment other than strong commendation of the work that's going on, and an emphasis that, again, it's this coming together. It's an outstanding, the BCF is an outstanding tool. I've used that word twice now in one meeting, but it really is, that can really change people's lives by our coming together. And that, I think, is always the theme that runs through this whole meeting. Mark?
I think just to that point, I think the bit where we've got the case study and things like that coming through, I think we're doing a bit more of that to give life to what is otherwise a set of spreadsheets that align spending priorities well. But you're right, behind that is actual services that are coming together and being linked up in ways that are making differences to people. So
there is a volume of books to be written, and that line's being changed.
And just to take the opportunity to endorse this report and the previous report, there's so much learning in both of the items, so much great practice. And again, linking it back to the development of place-based working, community working, working together across systems with communities to the lives of residents is absolutely at the heart of it. So really, really pleased to see these reports and bringing it to life and seeing the evolution of how we present the work that we do and celebrate working closely in communities, in partnership, focusing on early intervention and prevention. And that's a theme from both the subsequent this and the strategic alliance report. So actually it's a really, really strong theme throughout this Health and Wellbeing Board's agenda. So capturing that and the passion of colleagues that are involved from across these topics came out in the workshop that I'm harking back to. And that's a distillation. It's making real difference. It makes financial sense. It makes good outcome sense to our residents. And it stimulates colleagues, VCS partners in believing we can make positive difference because we're demonstrating it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to take away and learn from this, particularly this session.
Paula?
I just wanted to say that it's really welcome to see within the report the linking with other programmes and projects that are running, so the Future Care and the Integrated Neighbourhoods, place-based. It's good to see that linkage, and I think that's something that we would welcome seeing as all reports come forward, that we can see that linking and the joining up. One question I did want to ask, and forgive me if it's not quite the right people to ask, but the tech-enabled care, which is obviously a really big, ever-growing part of care delivery, is that linked into the discharge hubs that are being developed within the hospital-based systems? So are staff being trained on that tech? Are they aware of it? Do they know how to link in with it? Because I think it's something that the general populace, the residents of Dorset, don't really know what's available, and it'd be good to think it was happening from discharge onwards, not just when somebody leaves hospital.
I think there's always more that can be done, but there is more. We do sort of make that effort to make sure that staff are aware of what's available, because that can often limit a discharge opportunity just because people aren't aware. So yeah, there's always more, but we do that work. And also particularly we've got in our sort of examples of kind of our VCSE-led services as well, we're always making sure that we're sharing that across all of our organisations and our care providers as well. So they can kind of have that initial conversation, just so we're kind of really clear on what the opportunities are, and also to manage expectations too.
And some of this is about preventative tech rather than just on hospital discharge, which is fun. I think that's it. Oh no, we have Paula.
Sorry, just to come back after that. No, I welcome that. One further thing I'd welcome is greater linkage between care homes and the VCSE sector. I still think it's a little bit disparate, and we don't necessarily recognise that care homes are part of a community, not just a service within a community. And often people at home get offered services that people in care homes don't get offered when they should. So I think there's some work there within the VCS to make sure we're aligning better with care homes, and obviously this work could be part of a way forward for that.
Here.
Well, just to add to that point, because I think that brings us full circle to the place-based prospectus and all of that conversation again, doesn't it? And we've just awarded the first round of Dorset Care Framework contracts under the residential and nursing care lots of the framework. We're back out again for a second round, and I think those relationships that we get through that contracting, and contracting is often transactional, but it ought to be transformational as well. And so I think those are some of the opportunities for us to advance some of those conversations about not just getting people to do more, but I think there's also something about raising the visibility of what is actually happening around care homes being an active part of their local communities. And I think it's probably a lot more than we're capturing and talking about and lifting up. So some opportunities there, I think, definitely.
At some point in the work plan, we're going to receive a report from our Thriving Communities team, which again is doing core work, and it's just actually started in the last few weeks on disseminating grants within communities. So it really is all coming together. I won't go with any words. Enough for today, I think. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for the contributions. Oh, we need a proposer for the recommendations that were up. I would like to propose, please. Can I have a seconder? Rachel, yeah. All agreed? Paul, agreed. Thank you very much. Have I done okay job now, George? Thank you very much. With which I can now go on holiday. Thank you very much for coming. I actually really enjoy these meetings. It's just nice to meet and just feel that we're making progress. I know behind the scenes, it's all frustration and why aren't people listening to us? Everything comes together. Thank you. And have a nice rest of the summer.